So good morning, everyone. My name is Carolyn Peterbow. I am so happy to welcome you to the Teeny Tiny Summit today. And there's so many people joining in, but we do have, we'll invite you as you join in and you start to join the chat to introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining from today, and also tell us why you enjoy volunteering. And I think if I'm answering that question, you know, there's been maybe a different way of volunteering in the last few years with COVID and some of the changes that have happened. And I had an epic volunteer event a few weekends ago that involved a fair and helping fundraise for an organization that I'm quite passionate about, 4-H. And after those 2 days of, you know, cooking burgers and flipping burgers and all those sorts of things, I felt better than I'd felt in 2 years. Like, honestly, that ability to do to the community, giving back to the community, made me feel good. And it just sort of summed up to me why volunteering is important. So my name's Carolyn Peterborough. I'm your moderator along with my wonderful colleague, Karen Fisher at OMAFRA in our community economic development a priority area. We're a small but mighty team who are really passionate about bringing opportunities to for teeny tiny places to life. And we've been delivering teeny tiny summits for a number of years, and we've packed halls all across rural Ontario. And for the last 2 years, we've been packing the internet, you know, packing people onto the internet to take part. And we've held almost 2,000 people from every part of Ontario who shared practical examples, lessons learned, and community economic development tactics that are appropriate for the smallest communities in Ontario. So today's topic is Inspiration Loves Company. It's attracting and inspiring and retaining volunteers. So why are we talking about volunteerism in a teeny tiny summit? Because volunteerism is the backbone of the many important ways in which we help our communities improve both their economic well-being in the small community and, you know, making our communities a place we want to live. As we all know, in both small and big places, community economic development is really dependent on volunteers. So how do we go about dealing with the challenges of recruiting or supporting these volunteers? We're going to delve into that topic today with our wonderful group of speakers that you're going to get an opportunity to meet. I've got to, some of them I've got to meet last week for the first time, and some of them I've had the pleasure of meeting last year through Teeny Tiny, and it's just been an amazing experience, and I'm so happy that all of you are going to get to share that experience as well. So to begin, I would like to first ask my colleague Karen Fisher to come on screen and to deliver a land acknowledgement.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Carolyn, for that introduction. And as Carolyn mentioned, my name is Karen Fisher, and I am very privileged to be working on the Community Economic Development Priority Area team for OMAFRA, and to have been involved with Teeny Tiny Summits since the beginning in 2015. So this has been very much a labor of love, I think, for all of us who have been involved on the planning side. And I'm very pleased to be sharing my acknowledgement with you this morning. As I was preparing these words for you today, I'm reminded how important it is to take the time to reflect, and not just on one day or once in a while, but every day. We are located on a virtual platform today, and we are all located on lands that were inhabited by First Peoples, the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples of this land since time immemorial. I would like to acknowledge that I'm a white settler, a first-generation Canadian born of parents who emigrated to Canada and worship this country. I appreciate their perspective, and as their experience was very different from mine. As part of my learning journey, I'm recognizing more and more the dark side to the history of this country, the dark history of residential schools, colonialism, and the ongoing harms that intergenerational systems that are in place since the onset of colonialism continue to disproportionately harm Indigenous peoples and communities. I am speaking to you today from Consacon, which is an Indigenous, Consacon is an Indigenous name meaning an opening in pickerel, and I'm located in Prince Edward County. These lands encompass the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat nations. Prince Edward County is adjacent to Tyendinaga Mohawk territory and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte community, and I am grateful that I'm able to benefit from the rich culture and community that exists at Tyendinaga. I'm grateful that I continue to build strong relationships and engage in continuous learning and listening, both through my work and as an individual. Last Friday was National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I spent the day in reflection and learning and sharing experiences with colleagues. And by participating in a local event and listening and learning from local First Nation representatives. This day was incredibly powerful to me, and it reminded me that I'm on the right path, no matter how daunting it seems. I fly an Every Child Matters flag on the front of my home, and I wore an orange shirt on Orange Shirt Day, recognizing that these actions may be considered as performative. Land acknowledgements can also be considered as performative. For me, I know in my heart that I am committed to true, ongoing, authentic action that comes from my heart, from the place that I will do what is in my power and influence to acknowledge truth and advance reconciliation. There's so much to learn about our shared history, and at times it does seem daunting and reconciliation seems unattainable. In spite of this, I am committed more than ever. As of 2 days ago, if you haven't heard, the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte achieved a partial settlement with the federal government. Almost 300 acres of land were reclaimed by Tyendinaga Mohawk territory, and compensation of about $31 million provided to the community. A milestone and definitely a small step in the right direction. I want to share with you my commitments. My commitments grow and change as I do and as I learn and understand more. I commit to building deeper relationships with Indigenous peoples, communities, and organizations that I'm privileged to know and to work with. I commit to continue to listen, learn, and act. I commit to always having an open mind and heart. I commit to being a champion for Indigenous colleagues and to work to create a less harmful workplace and to help dismantle the systems that cause them harm. I commit to supporting reconciliation in my work. Our communities are more rich, diverse, and vibrant when we have a reconciliation lens, when we embrace the truth of our shared past and find ways to move forward together. By recognizing this, we are able to build more inclusive programming tools and resources that support reconciliation in our communities, where we can all benefit and grow from our shared prosperity and our paths towards reconciliation.
Thank you, Karen. Karen has been a real leader at OMAFRA in diversity, equity, inclusion, and we've all been going on a path of writing our own land acknowledgements. And Karen, thank you for sharing the work you've done in that area today. It's really appreciated. So moving on to our virtual meeting etiquette, we've got lots of people on. I think we're over 100 already that have signed in. So just a few tips. If you're not speaking, if you can mute your microphone, that is helpful. If you are speaking, just be mindful of background noise. Position your camera properly, so try to keep it on your face. And if you have questions for your speakers, just feel free to type them in the chat. And between Karen and I and our colleague Serena, we'll be pulling those out and making sure they get asked. And if you have ideas or experiences that you want to share, just share them in the chat. I'd be really happy. We love this group because you're so willing to share your experiences and your ideas. So please do continue to do that. I wanted to talk about, this is the first teeny tiny of sort of this round. We had one earlier in March this year, but coming up we have our next one is around how does diversity, equity, and inclusion support community economic development? And we're going to be looking at how communities, economic developers, organizations, and others focus on economic recovery and look at applying that diversity, equity, and inclusion framework. And so we're really looking forward to bringing out some speakers that and some communities of the work they've been doing, share where they're at, and provide some support for smaller communities or who are really exploring those ways in which you can look at that diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective. So that's our next one. And then March 1st, we're looking at the importance of a plan for community vitality. And you'll note when you registered, as well as we will be sharing an evaluation poll, we're asking you the question repeatedly, like whether you'd prefer this virtually or you'd prefer this in an in-person format, and for that March 1st particular session. And just to go over our agenda today, we've got a full agenda as always at Teeny Tiny Summits with lots of speakers. I won't spend a lot of time introducing our speakers at this time because we've got a plan for that. But just if you do want to use social media to talk about the Teeny Tiny Summit, we do have a hashtag. Teeny Tiny Summit, pretty easy to use that. And we're hoping today to really focus on that economic development that works in small places, to hear about examples, relevant tools, success stories, explore some of those key issues, and then virtually connect and share ideas. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Pam Sain. So Pam is with the Rural Ontario Municipal Association. She has been part of this planning and idea piece for this group for the last 2 years, and we're just so happy to have Roma as a partner in the Teeny Tiny Summits, and I'm happy to turn it over to Pam to say a few words and to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. And I do want to say briefly a heartfelt thank you to Karen for her Truth and Reconciliation recognition and her personalizing it in a way that we all need to continue to do that. So just wanted to say that. So Karen, from the heart, thank you for that. So I'm Pam Sain, counselor from Minden Hills. As said, I'm on the Roma board. And I'm very pleased and very happy to be part of this Teeny Tiny Summit and planning, and feel quite privileged to be part of this. The last time we were together was in early March, and many things have happened since then, including municipal elections are taking place now, of course. One thing remains the same, and that's the importance of Teeny Tiny Summits to our communities, and especially volunteerism, as we're talking about today. Roma has been a very proud sponsor of Teeny Tiny Summits for a number of years, and the conversation that these summits provide are not only critical to our planning and for the future of rural communities, but they are also inspirational. And I'm even the pre-discussion before we started, I was becoming more and more inspired by our speakers who will be coming this forward soon. They remind us of the benefits and the beauty of living and working and growing in rural Ontario. And so I want to also make a special thanks to Omafra, Carolyn Peterborough, and Karen Fisher for all the work they do on these and putting these Teeny Tiny Summits together and finding the resources and coordinating all of it. The Teeny Tiny Summits are important testaments to our Renew and our rural communities. Today is the first of the next series of summits that will take place in 2023. And today we're beginning with the keynote panel, Inspiration Loves Company, the Art of Attracting and Retaining Volunteers. The Teeny Tiny Places community economic development is largely dependent on the work of volunteers. We all know that. This session will look at unique challenges and solutions to recruiting and supporting rural volunteer and share some amazing success stories brought about by mighty volunteers. When a group of dedicated, committed, and inspired volunteers put their minds and efforts together, they can achieve, and I think you know the rest of this statement from Margaret Mead. It's amazing what a small group of volunteers can do. So I would like to first introduce Heather Keam. Heather is an Associate Director of Cities Deepening Community Vibrant Communities and the Tamarack Institute. She is passionate about community, and in her spare time is volunteering on many community projects and currently working in her small town to build a sense of belonging and connection. So thank you very much for being here, Heather, and I will pass it over to you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Thumbs up. You see the screen? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say that my office is located on the Haldeman Tract promised to the Haudenosaunee people of the Sixth Nation, which includes 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. This land is the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. So I'm a country gal. I've lived in a rural community my entire life. To answer the question that everyone was answering today, why I volunteer for my children and their friends, so that they have stuff that can be done in our local communities, and to keep local things in our communities, programs, activities, and services. And so today I am going to talk about the trends in community, and thinking about how community has changed over the last 30 years. And then I never leave a conversation without tools, resources, or ideas. So I threw those into this. So I'm hoping I have enough time in 15 minutes to share what I have to share. So trends in our community. We need to think about the last 30 years and how things have changed. And the Chief Medical Officer of Health in 2019 put out a report. And in that report, he identified, or they, I should say they, because it's a group, identified some key things that we need to think about our communities. And the first one is changing in our family and social structures. We have to understand that the two-person working, one at home has changed, and that we are smaller families. We are more spread out. Born and raised in the same community doesn't really exist anymore. The increase in divorce rates, single parents, and most importantly, weaker networks and supports for extra activities. And, you know, parents used to, hey, mom, dad, can you watch my children while I go do this? Well, my parents live on the other side of the country now. And so we have to think about those kind of changes in our family structures. Work and time pressures. There are more shift working. There are more two-income families. And multiple jobs shift and trying to organize shift work with parents. These demands really lead to a decrease in involvement in all forms of social activity and community life. It costs more to be socially connected. So I'm part of a group right now, and our membership fees have gone up to over $100. That's expensive to be a volunteer in our community on an association. It's more expensive to drive to where I need to go to volunteer. In a rural community, you have to rely on a car or a way or a means of getting to the volunteer work that you need to be doing. And food costs are going up too, and babysitting costs. So the cost to be able to be involved in our community has gone up. We spend more time in our cars, urban sprawl. And the way we design our communities leads us to be in our cars more often. And so that leaves a very small window, and that the research says the window of people willing to give their time is 6:30 to 8 p.m. Now that is for the people who are not retired. And so you have an hour and a half of time that people have available to do volunteer and get involved. Technology. So this one here is a little bit of a struggle because pre-COVID, technology actually was a negative. You spend more time on the screen. You didn't need to go out to connect anymore. The kids' Xboxes, they don't need to be out with their friends. However, COVID showed us that technology is actually a benefit in terms of keeping our volunteer work going, and some of the groups and activities that we're doing. Participation in community. So I'm going to use the example of the election right now that's happening in Ontario. It is the all-time low of people putting in their hats to run. We have more counselors in our area that are been acclaimed. And so just that whole civic duty in our communities has been declining over the last 30 years. And if you haven't read it or know about it, Robert Putnam, it's called Bowling Alone, suggests that our overall experience of being in community has been declining since the 1960s. And we have an all-time low voter turnout. And so those are our basic civic duties. And if those are low, all the other stuff like volunteering for baseball and all that, that's going to be even lower. The other thing that we have to think about is COVID and how COVID has changed the way we are in our community. It has challenged our long-held traditions and habits. And it's made us think about what do we want to keep? What we were doing, was it really the right way to be doing it? And then there was all that possibility and the changes that we saw and we did. Do we want to lose those? So right now, a lot of organizations and groups and community are questioning the way. And it also, in terms of individuals, that time period where everything was shut down, we realized how much we value our free time, that the opportunity and the chances of me wanting to give up that because I experienced it. So people aren't volunteering anymore, or they're being very picky. They're being very choosy on what they volunteer for because they had a chance to experience not doing anything and enjoying that time of freedom. And then lastly, I was having this discussion before we all got started, was the change in rural communities. My rural community, I've been here 18 years and I finally feel like I belong after 17 years. And what I'm noticing in our community is a divide happening amongst those who are born and raised here and the newcomers that are coming into our community, the lack of vision for our community. And so we are trying to reimagine ourselves, and programs and services are becoming more regionalized and are being removed from our communities. And so you really need to think about all of this and the landscape and the changes in our community and reflect on how you're recruiting your volunteers. Is it the right way? How do we address these? How do we work with the volunteers in the community to make it easier for us to volunteer? And so that's like $1 million question. And so I'm not going to leave you without some ideas or suggestions on how. I love asset-based community development. And it's a way of engaging communities from organizations and institutions to associations to volunteer groups. And what I love about it is that it changes the way we think of our communities. When I talk to a lot of volunteer groups, they talk about the negative. That the volunteers don't show up, they don't do this, they don't do that, we don't have enough, blah, blah, blah. We talk about the negative. How do we switch the conversations to be a more positive, more asset? So, and I think it's because we talk about the negatives because that's all we know. We haven't thought about the possibilities, the assets that we have in our communities. And so asset-based community development is about looking at individuals and communities with assets and capacities, finding those, and then matching those to what is needed. Where traditionally we decide what is needed, and then we just do a mass call out and try to fill spots and fill seats. You don't build relationships by doing it that way. And so asset-based community development is, there's 6 assets in our community. The contribution of residents, the individuals, everybody, and this actually will go to your November 30th, everybody has a gift, an asset, no matter who or what you are. That's the premise of this. And then the associations, when you connect gifts and assets together and create associations, create opportunities for volunteering based on those assets, you create these associations. And then we have the local institutions, which are profit, not-for-profit, and government. We have local places. These are the lands that we are on and everything on it and around it, the natural environment, the built environment. We have exchanges. This is social capital. So this is taking those gifts and assets of individuals and bartering and exchanging. You have a lawnmower and I don't, but I have a snowblower. Let's swap and trade and share so we don't each have to own one. So these local exchanges that happen in our communities. And then the sixth asset, which is the one that I think we don't pay much attention to, and I feel like we need to be able to bring in this change in our rural communities, is culture, story, and history. It has a place in the way that we do our work in our communities. And it also helps to strengthen the culture that we are going to create, looking back at the past to see what we liked and looking at the future to see what we want and bringing the two together. So there's a lot more about asset-based community development, and I'm just introducing this because I want to introduce asset mapping as a means to help with volunteers. So asset mapping is looking at those two top assets from asset-based community development. It is looking at the individuals, getting to know them, the planners, the organizers, the connectors, the people who like cooking, the bakers, and it's investing in having 100 cups of coffee to find what's available in your community. And then it's connecting them together. So as volunteer organizations and those who are trying to organize volunteers, if you get to know that and you map this out and you have this amazing database of people and their specific gifts, when you need something, you go to your database. It isn't just a take anybody, plunk them in a seat and, hand out tickets. I can't stand handing out tickets. I'm a burger flipper, but you're putting me in tickets because you didn't get to know me. And so this is really about how we take that and then how do we organize all of those gifts and assets in a better way. And there's connections, individuals to individuals, individuals to existing associations, individuals and forming new associations, and then association to association. And in my local community right now, we're working on this association to association because we are dwindling in our volunteers, but we want to keep our different groups going. So we're partnering up more. And one has the capability because they have their food handlers. We don't, but we have our Smart Serve. And so let's come together, right? So it's really looking at different ways of connecting and networking and bringing together. And so how do you find these gifts? These are really powerful questions. So again, if you want to look at a change in your process of how you find volunteers, these are amazing questions to get to know the volunteers. So what gifts, what are your most significant gifts? And these are something you're born with. So for me, I'm a big picture thinker. I can see a big picture out of anything. What are the most significant skills you have? These are things that you've learned over time. So I'm a natural event planner. Do I like it? No, but I'm really good at it. And I'm a good organizer. This passion piece is probably the most powerful question. Because when you look back at how I answered the original question was, I do this for my children. That is very different than what a lot of the things that were in the chat box. They do it because they love it. They want connection, da, 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 da. So passion, what are you passionate about that's going to activate you? This is really good when you want to get stuff done or you want to create a movement. Because you find those who are passionate about youth. You find those who are passionate about homelessness. You find those who are passionate about, and you'll be able to create a movement, a change. And then the last one is a knowledge one. So again, this is we have a natural human instinct to want to give back. And so this knowledge one is a way of giving back. So I can teach you how to crochet chevron Afghan blankets. I am more than willing to share that gift and skill, but nobody's ever asked me, right? So these are really great questions when you're doing your volunteering and finding folks in your community and creating a database. And I have one last tool. This is what I'm noticing as I'm volunteering in my group, is that people don't ask me what I want to get from this, and they don't ask me what my constraints are. So I, at one of my groups that I volunteer with, they do fines, which is a fun way of connecting, and then we donate that money to charity. I get fined every time because I'm late, but they never, it frustrates me because I'm late because I have children and I have to feed them to be able to get to that meeting. But so no one has asked me what my constraints are. So this is a great tool. What is my personal give? What can I give to this? I can give you crocheting lessons. I can give you this. I can give you that. What do I personally need to get from this? I need to get some training on how, actually my Smart Serve training. I'd really like that. I would really like to get training on some, I don't know, Excel. I'd like to get some training on whatever. And then my personal constraints. Listen, I can only do this between 7 and 9. I don't have a car. I don't have this, a babysitter, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, this is a great way to kind of assess. And I'm just going to leave with that. I say working with community moves at the speed of trust and relationship. So your main goal for connecting with people should be building trust and relationship and getting to know them, and not matching the program, the people to the program, but matching the program to the people. So I'm going to leave you with that. I think I did in 15 minutes.
Yeah, you were right in there. Because there is a question in the chat around, you'd referred to an article, Bowling Alone, or the question is it bowling alone or pulling alone? Could you?
Bowling, like a 10-pin bowling. Robert Putnam. And it is a big book. So I don't go to the library because it is a big book, but there are aspects of that in like there are great, and it's very data heavy. So if you're not kind of into that, but it is really, and it's talking about how our civic, like that's the biggest thing with our communities right now. First of all, our sense of belonging is the lowest ever. And we're disconnected, and COVID really put a spotlight and really enhanced that. We were disconnected before COVID. We're really disconnected now. And then just our involvement in civic life is really gone down. So you put all those together, it's really, it makes it for a very, what's the word? I can't even think of the word right now. I need another cup of coffee.
Yeah, I think I had that observation a few years ago, is you have more ways to be connected digitally, but it doesn't always fulfill that connection. And I think that experience I described of myself in September is like, I realized what I needed, right? Was that authentic connection. And I think you're going to hear a little bit in our next panel. Elaine's got some great examples of pulling together along with the group. Well, I'm just going to leave. You just talk about sense of belonging. So that's another passion of mine, is belonging, because it took me 17 years and I worked hard to feel like I belong in this community. There's a beautiful equation around belonging, and that is also part of volunteering, because sometimes you walk into a room and you're just, again, filling a seat or doing a task. And this equation is known plus noticed plus missed equals belonging. You know me. You noticed me walking in the room and my gifts and my talents. And if I didn't show up, you missed me. If you've got all three, if you do all three of those with each of your volunteers, they're going to feel like they really belong in what they're doing and in the group. You're making me all teary, Heather.
I'm so passionate about this.
I'm going to ask Pam to come in now. She's going to close off this session. So Pam.
Oh, I think we're just beginning something here. Heather Keam, thank you so much for your inspiration today and the tools that you provided, the give, get, and the constraints to bring people in. And I have to say, during this time of elections, I think every one of us, whether we're rerunning or whether we are not acclaimed or acclaimed, need to be going door to door. I'm finding it so enriching because all of the things that you talked about, I'm meeting at the door. We have so many resources in our little town, more places I can count of where I'm supposed to go back for lunch. It's so what a privilege to campaign and be able to actually go to every door in your community and meet people, and the inspirations that are there, and the number of skills that we have in our rural areas are astounding. And you've highlighted ways to bring out those assets and the ways to engage people. And I love the idea of association to association that you discussed, because that is critical to kind of keep that momentum going and let everybody know that we're all, struggling to get members on our fair boards,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and to create that momentum. Very inspirational, certainly inspired me to continue getting out there and going door to door. And I want to thank you for your great presentation today, and I'm sure we'll be in contact in the future. So thank you. And now I need to introduce Don DeGenova, and but I will. I think Karen, were you going to introduce him? Thank you. Is that correct? Okay.
Mute, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to introduce this panel of folks who have been doing some amazing work in their community. And so when Carolyn and I were kind of putting our heads together on, where's some really great examples and different perspectives, coming from different perspectives. So we ended up with this wonderful panel consisting of Don DeGenova, Tim Porter, Elaine Capusta, and Christine McLean. And they all work with volunteers. They are volunteers. And they all accomplish things, really strong economic development and community development outcomes as a result of the involvement that they have in the community. Don, I've known Don since probably 2008. I've worked with him as a community member. I've worked with Don when he was on council. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with Don moving forward. Elaine is with the Queensborough Community Association and a really, really passionate and committed volunteer in the community of Queensborough. And I've worked with them. We started out talking about, we did a First Impressions Community Exchange, one of OMAFRA's programs, and then I worked with them to develop a strategic plan. And what's really interesting is when I connected with Elaine to talk about this panel, all I could think about as she's talking to me and talking about their accomplishments is, oh, that was in the strategic plan. Oh, look, you've hit that goal. Or, it just was still so connected. And this was done in the early 2011, or I can't even quite remember. And Tim Porter is the artistic director of Tweed and Company Theatre, and his story and the work that he's done, not only in Tweed, but for the region, for arts in the region, is really, really inspiring. And Christine McLean is with Hastings County, and Christine is, I'm sorry, Christine, I'm not going to get your title right, but Christine is the person that supports and facilitates entrepreneur development in Hastings County. And I haven't had the pleasure yet to work directly with Christine, but I've worked with previous folks that were in that position, and was actually a volunteer on the resource board that helps to make things happen for entrepreneurs looking for help and assistance. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn. I probably took way too much time because I talk too much usually, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from the four of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. And that's something we both have in common. We have a tendency to talk too much. Anyway, I want to extend a great big thank you to OMAFRA and Karen and Carolyn for bringing us together for this teeny tiny summit, and to Pan from Roma for your continued support. And Karen, I really want to thank you for your heartfelt land acknowledgement. It certainly touches the soul. These summits are a wonderful opportunity to bring rural communities together so that we can learn from each other's successes and challenges, since we are battling the same issues. An opportunity to share what has worked well and what needs to be tweaked, and why reinvent the wheel when we don't have to. There's no need to beg, but yes, let's borrow and steal what others before us have created. For example, when we were creating the community improvement plan, we used much of what was developed by Pembroke and tweaked it for our community. And I thank Karen for that and helping us develop that plan. Thank you, OMAFRA. You've always been there for us. You're probably wondering why I do this. I do this every time I get the privilege of speaking or learning from teeny tiny summiteers. It's like we have our own Mickey Mouse Club, but we are anything but Mickey Mouse. We are forces to be reckoned with. We are loud and we are mighty, fighting what is good for our communities. And it's always wonderful to know that OMAFRA has our backs. I'm grateful for all that they have done for Tweed, the municipality of Tweed, and I look forward to working with you in the future. I have to share that because I'm hoping the people that you report to see the importance that you have on all of us. So, the municipality of Tweed, we are 6,500 residents, 800 kilometers of road, 52 bridges, 4 hamlets. We're talking a lot of infrastructure costs. A bridge can cost $2 million or more, and we've got about 5 of them coming up. Today, I'm thrilled to be here with my esteemed colleagues as we delve into inspiration loves company. How do we attract, inspire, and retain volunteers? I'm welcoming Elaine Capusta, a volunteer extraordinaire from the inspiring hamlet of Queensborough. Tim Porter, the artistic director and creative genius behind Tweed and Company Theater, and Christine McLean, Hastings County Small Business Coordinator, who helps our businesses. Each will be talking about what they and their army of volunteers have done to help them succeed. I was a municipal councillor for 8 years, and now I am mayor-elect. I recently noted in an article that people aren't moving to our municipality because it is dying. They are here because it's an exciting place to live, work, and play. And we can be thankful to our volunteers for helping us build that image. I moved to Tweed 15 years ago and have been a community activist ever since. I started with being a library board trustee and quickly became the new library fundraising chair. Within 2 years, we had a brand new $900,000 library, and it cost the municipality $120,000. Negotiations with the feds and the province for funding was all done by volunteers. And $180,000 in funds was raised in less than 2 years, also by volunteers. The community now has an amazing asset, a hub for the community, a $900,000 library that cost the municipality only $120,000. The same principles apply to our new Kiwanis Accessibility Playground, the Aaron Palmetier Outdoor Pool, the Emily Trudeau Splash Pad, the John DeVries Soccer Pitch. All are recreational assets that we have because of our volunteers. The Kiwanis Club manages our municipal pavilion. The Lions Club is responsible for our Tweed Hungerford Hall. And our hamlets and their recreational programs are all run by volunteers from each of those hamlets. The Tweed Music Festival Group is responsible for the Elvis Festival and the Front Porch Ruckus. The Agricultural Society brings the fair to town and hosts the Harvest Festival and Winter Carnival. The Horticulture Society plants and maintains all our floral gardens in the village. I can go on and on about what our volunteers do, and how we have come to depend on them to make the municipality of Tweed totally awesome place to want to live. Our foundation's youth center.
Don, you got really quiet.
Are we back? Am I
Oh,
back?
that's better. Yeah.
I don't know. I had to turn that phone off, but it's coming on my computer now. So sorry about that, everybody. I was just going to say, I can go on and on about our volunteers, what they do and how we have come to depend on them to make the municipality of Tweed a totally awesome place to want to live. Our foundation's youth center, which is located in the basement of our municipal building, is a great source for volunteers. Put up the call and they are there. They are fun to work with. They bring a sense of energy and enthusiasm to what we do, and they truly work hard. Plus, they also get credit for their school volunteer hours. So if you put all of this together, everything I've just talked about, you tally up the hours, you assign a minimum wage, well, I'm saying $15 an hour right now. Well, we are well over $1.5 million in volunteer support to our community. If you add in the recreational projects that they have championed, the library, the revenue from the concerts and events and that they bring into our community, and bang, we are looking at another $5 million easily. Easy to see why we are grateful for our volunteers. However, as of late, like many other communities, our volunteers are getting tired. Our volunteers are getting older. Our volunteers serve on more than one committee and they are getting burnt out. Personally, I sit on 6 committees. As Heather mentioned, COVID has kept us home and is still a concern for many. COVID has made us forget how to get out and socialize. And COVID has made us tired, weary, and angry. And yes, it is hard to get to those young families because they are raising a family. Often both parents working, they have a house and a yard to maintain and kids to run around, and they're tired too. But some of those mothers and fathers are coaches, referees, kid carpoolers, and sit on committees that their children are involved with. And for that, we are grateful. So what are we going to do about this? Trying to find new volunteers to sit on our committees. This year, the Kiwanis Club of Tweed hosted for the first time what we called a community fair. In that fair, we invited 25 different community organizations to join us at the pavilion and set up a table with their promotional materials on who they are, with somebody behind that table, 1 or 2 people. And as we welcomed people from the community to come in and hear more about what we do, what we're looking for. And so we had quite a few people attend that community fair. Not as many as we would have liked, but this is the first time we did it. But we are looking forward to doing this on an annual basis. But as a result of that, right now, I know 20 people who have joined one of those organizations because it was something that spoke to them. We never asked people when they came in, oh, we want to recruit you. We just took it as an opportunity to explain what we are all about, what we do for our community, and what needs we have. You take that information home, think about it, and get back to us. And so that was a huge success for the community. The other thing we're looking at doing is creating a committee task force. Identify a project with a start and a finish date. Not everybody wants to commit to a monthly meeting at a certain time. What they like to do is they might want to just work on a specific project that they know that they don't have to commit an extended period of time to. And often what happens, once that work is completed, they can move on, or maybe they may want to stick around and join the committee. The other thing is create a volunteer list for one-off events. For example, the Kiwanis Club always hosts an annual chicken barbecue. We can't do it all our own. So we have what we call Friends of Kiwanis. What we do is when we have a project like that and we need people, we go to our list and they come out and they support us. It's a one-day event. They don't have to commit to Kiwanis on a regular basis. And they're grateful for being able to help us do something wonderful for the community. I'm sure Tim is going to talk about Tweed and Company and the volunteers that they have as well. In regards to newcomers, as I've been campaigning, I've noticed that a lot of people aren't aware about some of the things that we do. So we were thinking about, what if we got realtors to provide new homeowners with a welcome package that lists all community groups with a brief description who to contact, and how to join a committee. It can also list all events and activities. And it would be great if the realtors reached out to a central coordinating body so that somebody could call that individual and say, hey, see, you got your package. Do you have any questions on anything? Can I help you? Can I direct you? The other thing is to include descriptions of all the volunteer organizations on the municipal webpage. And municipalities need to be sensitive and supportive and appreciative of their volunteers. A resource that we can't afford to alienate. Now, during COVID, there were some cases where there were some tensions with various volunteer groups. We need to reach out, we need to make amends, and we need to make sure that everybody feels welcome and back at the table to see us through with the wonderful things that we want our community to be. And then tonight, I am going to the Municipal Volunteer Appreciation Awards. And this is a program that the municipality does every year where they invite all volunteers, no matter what organization you're on, to a community dinner. And then at that dinner, they award awards to various community organizations and individual volunteers who are not selected by the municipality, but by the community itself. And it's going to be a lovely and a fun evening. So there's some of the things that we are looking at doing and have been doing to try and keep and retain volunteers. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Elaine Capusta to talk about the wonderful things that they're doing in Queensborough. And then following Elaine will be Tim and then Christine McLean. Thank you very much.
There I am. Well, hi, you know, I'm Elaine Capusta, and I live in a very teeny tiny hamlet. There may be 150 people in a 2 square mile area. I was raised here, left when I was 18, came back 40 years later, and I absolutely love Queensborough. We had a very sad thing happen last night that one of our old buildings, people were living there, had done a lot of work on it, but it burnt last night. And that will affect the whole community because historical buildings are really important to Queensborough and to me too. But I'm here to talk about the community and volunteers and the art of attracting. And I've heard it already today, and that's the whole business about being friendly. And, you know, friendly is like a wave, but for those people who are new, this is true. You drive in the car, the wave, the 2-finger wave, people will recognize your car and then will get to know you. And that means new people coming in, they may know why this person is waving at you, but it sets the stage for future connection. I believe that we have to find the currency. What's important for people? What is their currency that they hold dear? And once you know that, then you have some way to make a connection. So that means we have to listen. We have to listen to find out what they care about. We've talked about it before, I think just today, is the whole business of they may be interested in a group and they may sign up for a group, but the group is only little. They need to be able to sign up for the whole community. And so we need to think about the bigger picture of there's lots of things that make up the community. So we have to work together. Certainly in little tiny communities, you hear the whole thing like we wear 2 hats, like, yes, I belong to that group and that group, but I wear, you know, so you have 3 hats you're doing, but it's the same people doing the work. So we're very short on people. We have lots of hats. Inspiring and retaining volunteers. When you reach out, and we've said it, they may not want to sign on the dotted line that they're going to join the group, but they will definitely, if you ask for a task, they will do a task. So if you get the task and that goes okay, they will have more interest in doing more tasks. And we know that when you do joint work, you cement the group. So once you have lots of things happening and you have fun doing them, then people will be more interested in signing on the dotted line to be a member of a group. What's the next thing? Oh, I'm going to give you a little story. I'll have time. So here we have some new people have entered Queensborough from the city. I just had a guy tell me last night, he was talking about people coming from the city. And he says, you know, the people coming from the city. And I said, well, I came from the city. He said, yeah, but you were here first. And I'm thinking we have to somehow overcome that if you don't have roots here that went back decades, then it's okay to be friendly and get along and do things with them. Anyway, here's my story. The new people, we were planning the pig roast and the corn roast, and we were sitting around and we were chatting this up, and one of the new people said, we should have background music. We should have some background. I and another longtime resident at the same time yelled out, no, we have to talk. We have to get to know those people. And this poor person has asked this about music twice. At the pig roast, it finally dawned on me, yeah, we could have had background music. It would have been fine. But this is where you have to sort of check yourself and say, are you really open to new ideas coming in? Further economic development, I guess it's when new people come, the older, not even age-wise, but just if they've been here, they have all sorts of ideas of what they could do with their property. And they're always saying, oh, you could do this, you could do that. I think sometimes we're too pushy in telling others what we need instead of listening to what maybe they would like to do. I think I think I've done my minutes, and you don't want to hear any more because I could go on forever. What do you think, Carolyn?
Elaine, it's Karen. That's one of the things I really love about you is, you know, you have so many stories and great examples, and again, so much passion for your community, and it really does show in everything that you do. And we can delve maybe a little more into stories when we have our conversation after everybody has a chance to present. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to say, I should have said something about Elaine. Like, I've known Elaine forever. In fact, she's been one of the most welcoming people you're ever going to meet in the whole municipality of Tweed. And she's got great ideas and is well loved within her community. So thank you very much, Elaine. I really appreciate your sharing your stories with us. And if you want more stories, just give Elaine a buzz. She's got a whack of them. Anyway, I'd also like to introduce Tim Porter, one of the most amazing young people I've ever met in my life. He has taken this community to a whole new level. His dream is to make the municipality of Tweed in Eastern Ontario the Drayton of Eastern Ontario. Drayton Theatres is huge in the west of Ontario. That's his dream, and he is succeeding. I'm not going to steal his story, but I just want to let you know that he's born and raised here in Tweed. He's an amazing actor. I just found out he's an amazing dancer too. He was doing Dancing with the Stars. And anyway, he has done so much to bring the theatrical arts to our community that it is beyond belief. And the economic benefit is incredible. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks so much, Don. So hi everyone, my name is Tim Porter. I'm the Artistic Director of Tweed & Company Theatre, a small-ish professional theatre company in Eastern Ontario. Tweed & Company is a creator and producer of original Canadian musical theatre, as well as larger scale musical productions, concerts, film, and more. We now own the Marvel Arts Centre in Tweed and operate the Bancroft Village Playhouse. We have consistently grown over the past 14 years and now have a permanent staff of 6, as well as hiring approximately 50 contract employees over the course of the year and bringing in countless artists, musicians, and one-night-only performers. I'm from Tweed, born and raised, and like many moved away to the big city for many years to pursue a career there in performing. I've been lucky enough to consistently work in my chosen field for almost 20 years in the not-for-profit sector. Being in the city, I would frequently reflect on the incredible volume of arts and culture opportunities within a few block radius, while looking back at my home region and noticing a large underserved area across Eastern Ontario. I founded Tweed & Company in 2009, and what started as a small scale, occasional 1 or 2 performances a year organization has grown into a significant arts and culture institution in our county and a major player in the professional theatre industry in Ontario. We started with a handful of volunteers, mostly our moms and a few avid friends and other family members, and now boast a roster of over 100 volunteers across our organization, serving 2 communities in Hastings County. Those volunteer opportunities range from our board of directors to front of house ushers, billets, bartenders, set helpers, and everything in between. So while we are a staffed organization, my boss is Don, technically, the president of our board currently, and we are a volunteer-led organization despite having grown to the point of having staff. In our 14 years, we've been blessed with incredible volunteer retention and have grown our roster of volunteers in every discipline year over year. I think there are many reasons for this, and I'll try to distill a few. First and foremost, I'll preface by saying we're a pretty easy sell. We know that. We're an arts and culture and entertainment organization, and volunteering with us often means hanging out with some friends in a positive and exciting environment, and then watching a show for free. So while I expect that that's the reason that a lot of people sign up in the first place, I think it's actually the least of the reasons why they stick around. Our volunteers feel valued and useful. Everyone who volunteers with us has a clear job and responsibilities, and we want them to feel that their time they so generously give us has been well spent. They have added value to our patrons' experience. It's a nice feeling. In theater, we frequently talk about how the most valuable thing an audience member actually gives us is their time. Money comes and goes, but you can't get your time back. And the fact that those people have carved out that time in their day for us means we owe them the best performance possible. And I think this is doubly true for our volunteers. They've given us their time and we owe it to them to do our best work always and to constantly strive to do better. It's entirely up to our volunteers how much or how little they work. They let us know if they need to take a month off here or there, or if they can't bill it this year, but would take someone next year, etc. We foster a safe, happy, and comfortable work environment. And this is the biggest thing for us as an organization as a whole, for our staff and everyone. Humble brag, but I think we're really kind and fun and nice to be around. I genuinely believe our volunteers enjoy their time with us when they're in one of our buildings, and we enjoy our time with them. We want everyone who steps foot in our buildings, from staff to cast to audience to volunteers, to feel safe and happy, and we embody that from the top down. We are constantly pushing our organization to grow, to adapt, to build, and to enhance. While we aren't always successful, we collect no moss. It's exciting to be part of a success story, no matter how small that success. And when we grow and flourish, our volunteers also get to take pride in that. It doesn't even have to be growth necessarily or significant growth. It just needs to feel like forward momentum. We're also always adapting with the times and pushing ourselves to personal growth as well. We've always said that the moment one of us utters the phrase, "but that's the way we've always done it," we're dead in the water. And that's not to say that we don't do a lot of the same things, obviously, year over year, but we want to be constantly questioning ourselves. No one wants to be doing the same thing they've been doing for 20 years, the same way they've always done it. It may be safe, but it's not fun or sustainable. There's a palpable excitement around our organization that we are doing something different. Our shows are a unique experience for our guests and for our staff and volunteers. And the shows are often performances that they couldn't see anywhere else, and that sense of something different keeps people coming back. Our volunteers are important, they're an equal, and they know it. Our leadership have little to no ego, and I'm not sure it's something we've ever even consciously discussed, but it's the culture that we have cultivated in our hiring, recruitment, etc. Our volunteers know that they can tell us if they don't want to do something. They know they can make a suggestion if they see a better way to do something, and they can point something out if it's broken. They know that Emily or I will be there with them, cleaning the bathroom or jumping into bar back if needed. We know and love that our volunteers are just as, if not more important to the success of our company than we are. And we have no qualms about telling them that and listening to them. We don't wait until we need volunteers to desperately seek them out, but instead invite volunteers to join us throughout the year. Volunteering with us is immediate. If you come to a show and express an interest, we take down your name, number, and email and send you the email for the next volunteer schedule. A few years ago, we began an annual volunteer award of special recognition to honor a significant contributor that season. And with the reopening of the venues this year, we've started a new initiative stolen from a venue that I used to work at in the city, where any bar tips are pooled throughout the year. And then in January, we'll be renting out a local restaurant and we'll host a tips party for our amazing volunteers. They get to celebrate in our success as much as we do. We've always lived by the motto, collaboration is the key to success. Our company is not an island. We've always prioritized community involvement and new and exciting partnerships. You know that by supporting us, you're also supporting your entire community and helping support several other community organizations. The less self-centered our volunteer organizations can become, I believe the stronger they actually get. We're not possessive of our volunteers. We hope they'll give their time to many others, even if that means we don't get them as much. We genuinely love and appreciate all of our volunteers, and I enjoy spending time and working with new people at our performances or working on sets or venue maintenance with our volunteers. Our artists love to get to know their billets, and our billets love forming unique relationships with our artists. Our board believes in our vision and is excited to offer advice and frequently do some heavy lifting to help us grow and improve. No volunteer in our company is expected to work full-time and instead knows that they'll be sharing the load with a group of other competent individuals and that their contribution will be essential, significant, and appreciated. I recognize that most of that is probably preaching to the choir and things we've all heard before, and it's easy to say all those things we're doing and why it's working. The reality, of course, is that we often drop the ball and don't succeed in all those areas and make mistakes. And maybe that is actually our strongest asset when it comes to volunteer retention. We know that we'll make mistakes. We know that our volunteers will make mistakes. And we know, and hopefully our volunteers know, that this is a safe place to do that and that we will all learn and grow together. And that's the end of my presentation, but I did also just have a thought listening to everyone else that we, as a theater company and a huge volunteer database, we are an easy in for our community. We're often new people's first point of contacts. And maybe that's something that is something to seek out, is those easy ins in your community where you can try and steal some volunteers from. I often hear our volunteers in the back room talking about the other things that they're doing and recruiting each other to each other's activities. So that easy in might be a good opportunity for people. The end.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. I just want to go back a little bit on a couple of years ago, Tweed & Company Theater had no paid staff. They were all volunteers. So from 2009 till about 2000, I'm going to say 19, everything was done all volunteers. And it goes to show you, when you get a group of committed people who rally around a particular initiative, something great can come out of that later on. And as Tim mentioned, now we have 6 paid. So all of that volunteerism has now created an economy within itself. And then that also, because we're doing way more shows and we're way more successful, we're generating a lot more money for the businesses within our community, all starting from a volunteer organization, which still relies on volunteers, but now as a paid entity. I just got to throw this out there. We just had our most successful season ever. As Tim mentioned, we managed the Bancroft Playhouse. We staged Mamma Mia in August. We sold 4,000 tickets, sold out every show. Bancroft is a municipality of 5,000. So it goes to show you how many people it brought in, and the businesses within that community, the restaurants, their sales went through the roof thanks to this guy and his team. Okay, that's it. Over to my other favorite person, which is Christine McLean.
Yeah, you need these.
Chris-
I have one of these in the car if you need it. You can't hear anything, the headphone.
Sorry, are we okay? Are we okay?
Yeah,
I
don't
think
worry.
somebody
We'll
just
mute
unmuted.
that person. No worries.
I didn't know what was going on there. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, I've just gotten to know Christine over the last couple of months. She is the small business coordinator for Hastings County. I am a huge champion of this program, which encourages Christine to work with small business within our community to address the needs that they might be weak on. I'm going to let her talk more about her program. This program was around when I first came to the municipality, and I sat on the board, and we serviced over 1,100 small businesses within Hastings County and helped them be successful. The program died, and I'm so thankful it's back, and I'm currently the chair of it. And what I've seen Christine do already and the impact she's having on my community is phenomenal. I'm going to turn it over to you, Christine. Talk about it and your group of volunteers that are there to make a big difference.
Thank you, Don. I first have to say, Tim, thank you for making it such an easy act to follow. That's going to be a tough one to follow up on. But like Don said, I'm the small business coordinator for Hastings County. So we cover about a population of around 45,000 people. So it's quite a large area. And I first want to just start by saying why volunteering is important to me and how I fit into this community. So like Tim said, like many, I grew up in Peterborough, and then I was in Toronto for about 10 years after I went to university. And then when I wanted to kind of settle down, I moved to Hastings County. So I've been in Marmara since 2019. And what Heather mentioned about that sense of belonging was what brought me to volunteering. I didn't know anyone when I moved to Marmara. I had friends and family about an hour away, but not in my immediate community. And so I was invited to submit an application for the Economic Development Advisory Committee. So to me, that was a great opportunity to meet a group of people immediately that were doing great things in the community, as well as share maybe some knowledge and information that people in this area might not have. My background is in art consulting and project management. So I haven't done the market research, but I don't think there's a lot of people that specialize in that in this community. But it really was that sense of belonging, figuring out what's around, figuring out who people are, and just learning more about the community and where I could fit into that. So further along into the beginning of this year, I had a great opportunity to join Hastings County as a small business coordinator. And it was a great fit for me as a certified coach. I was able to bring that and my small business experience into Hastings County. So in a nutshell, it's business coaching. So like Don mentioned, I meet with business owners, whether they want to start a business or whether they're already in business and just looking to evolve in some way at any stage of their business. And we talk about where they're at right now, what is working for them, what's not working for them, and where they want to go. And then we work together to figure out a plan for how they can get there. So I'm not an advisor or consultant, and I always make sure to talk about that with the business owners because it's their vision. It's not what I think they should do for the business. It's not what others in the community think they should do for the business. Again, to Heather's point, where everyone has unique gifts and talents. And it's really important to dive into that because that's where you find the most success, is when people are happy and engaged in what they're working on. That's not to say that you can't have other expertise, get other expertise and ask questions to help broaden what options people might look at in order to get that success. So that is my main job, is asking questions and planting seeds for consideration. So a wonderful part of the program that I'm working within, like Don mentioned, is the resource team. And so this has been reinvigorated when I started in the role, and we had our first meeting in June, I believe. And it's a collection right now of 22 volunteers and growing from around the community. They are from diverse industries, diverse experiences and backgrounds. And we're always working to expand that diversity as well, because diverse economies are strong economies and diverse communities are strong communities. So all of that is really important in building together and growing together. And so they are asked to come together once a month, and we talk about businesses that might need something, where if I don't know a contact, or I don't have the information, the specific information that they're looking for, then I can present that to the resource team, and they can share their insights on that I can then bring back to the business owner to help them get over whatever hurdle it is that we're facing. And I say the word we specifically because it really is about doing it together. It's really important to have those supports, both emotional, but informational, all of that stuff, to know that someone is championing you will help you keep moving forward. And I think I'm kind of the front line of that. I'm meeting with them one-on-one, but having the resource team and knowing that the resource team is there to back them, they're there to join them for their celebrations. I think it just heightens that those success stories and making sure that businesses are then sustainable. And they can also do things like mitigate risk. You can't know everything. There's big learning curves, especially if you're starting a new business. So because we have those diverse volunteers, there are some people that might have gone through something similar before, and so they can share insights into that to help navigate some tough spots and maybe miss some challenges that we don't necessarily need to take on. So I'll say from Don is an incredible volunteer recruiter. I think Don's energy, for anyone that doesn't know him personally, is so palpable, and it is something that really draws people in. I think for me, through all my experience with volunteering, that is a huge takeaway, is that the person that is the champion, leadership can be a tricky word, so I'll use the word champion instead. I think you need to believe in it. You need to really believe that the cause that you're working on is important, because if you don't, and you're just doing it for a line on your resume or whatever your reason is, if you don't believe in that, then you're not going to have very long-term success with who you're recruiting. So I think that's a huge benefit in who it is that's going out in the community and trying to engage people. And that trust factor as well. So of course, word of mouth is really, really helpful. So if you know someone that's a good fit and you have a good relationship, that's great. And from having a bit more of a business perspective and thinking about the marketing angle of it, knowing who you want on your team. And sometimes it's of course incredible to have people that you never would have thought of, but if you know that you have certain gaps in your volunteer base, thinking about it from a marketing perspective, and who are those people, where do they hang out, what are they listening to, and getting in front of them in that way, because you can't expect them just to find you. That can be a really hard route if you just expect them to land on your front door if they don't know where your front door is. So in terms of keeping them engaged as well, sharing client wins and making sure they're really embedded in the process. So whenever we have a client win with business owners for the resource team, I love to share that, whether it's they've hired a new employee or they've launched, but that's a bigger conversation. All of those things are so great to keep that motivation up on all fronts. And yeah, in terms of retaining them as well, if there's a business opening or an anniversary, inviting the resource team to join us. Again, that community building and knowing that people are championing you, I think from all sides, people really get invigorated by that. So our role in the community really is to build, help people build their businesses here, which builds that sense of community and that sense of belonging. So I'll pass it back over to you, Don.
Thank you very much, Christine. I think it's just such an honor to be on this panel with this wonderful group of people, because they are so committed to wanting to make a difference in their community in many different ways. And they do pull people together to want to work with them. And for that, I mean, all communities need that kind of resource, those kind of people with the passion and everything. And as you heard today, they all have that passion. And I'm just so happy that we're all in Tweed, because it's going to make life a lot easier here. Anyway, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Karen and Carolyn, and thank you very much to my wonderful panel. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. You know, it's always so gratifying and inspiring to you know, to hear from all of you. And I think every community has its amazing champions that need to be nurtured and supported in any way that people can. And I think you have all provided some really great you know, sort of great feedback on things that you've observed and ways that you keep people involved, you know, in the work that you're doing in your communities. And yes, very grateful. We do have a few questions that one of them is a specific question for Elaine. And hang on, let me just find it here. Okay, I seem to have lost it, but it was around, you know, you talked about assigning a task, and you know, how do you know which task to assign? Like, is there a methodology to that, or can you explain that?
Usually it's just, you know, labor, physical labor that you need, like someone to do the barbecue, but they don't like that. But certainly we need you to go and buy all the buns. We need you to get this. Could you do that? Something that is actually sort of a gopher activity, but desperately needs to be done. And someone spoke about finding, oh, I think it was our first speaker, finding what people like, or like, I like to take cash, I'll do the tickets. If you find out a little bit, you just put that away for next time. But for brand new people, something that's just simple work that needs to be done. And it's not threatening, because yes, I can go to the store and buy that.
Great. So do you have, do you have and this is for everyone, do you have a process to help, well, like once somebody, you know, taps on your door and you bring them in, do you have a process to orient the new folks to your table?
I'll speak to that, Karen, if you want. So we, a couple of things on that general theme. We, as most of us probably do, have a tick box website survey kind of thing when you're signing up to volunteer that says, these are the things I'm interested in. And then from there, we funnel those people into separate email chains so that the people that are interested in front of house ushering aren't getting 800 emails about set construction and vice versa. We do a volunteer training at the beginning of every year. Now, consistently throughout the year, we're adding more people usually. So we do, like for our industry specifically, we have the volunteers come an hour before and we just talk through everything. And so similar to what Elaine was saying, we kind of say at the beginning of that session, hey, are there people here that prefer to do 50-50? Or like, what do you want to work the bar? Do you want to try something different? But there's always like a 15-minute training session at the beginning of every volunteer opportunity.
Great.
I have one thing that at our pig roast, corn roast, a person who'd lived in the community a long time came up and said, oh, she would like to join the group or volunteer. It was whoopee. And there's a person who has been here for a long time, but reached out at that time to join. So immediately, whenever you're sending an email out to the rest of the committee, putting her in immediately to get the news, not having any formal situation. It's like, wham bang, you're going to get the agenda, you're going to get this and that. And yes, she couldn't come to the first or second one, but she's still there, and I'll still keep her on that list that she gets. So she's in the loop and we won't lose.
Yeah, great, thank you. It just kind of as a follow-up, like, what does good governance look like for your, for your community organization? What does that mean to you? And do you feel, just maybe you can answer that.
I just wanted a couple of things. I find organizations, depending upon where they are in their life cycle and their role, changes who they are and what they need and where they want to go. So, for example, Tim, I currently am the president of the Tweed and Company Theater, which was primarily a volunteer-based organization, which has moved to a paid staff and a much larger profile. And so the people on our board, now all of a sudden we require a different set of skills. And what we also do, because of the obligation and the amount of money that we apply for, like Tim has been successful this year and well over $350,000 in grants for different things. So we need a different skill set, and there's a different degree of responsibility in managing that, and also a different degree of liability. So we actually engage someone to provide board training, what it is to be a board member, what are the requirements of a board member and whatnot. So that's different than the Kiwanis aspect. Okay, and now I'm currently the president-elect for Kiwanis, and that's different because what we do is we have an information package that we would provide to an interested individual who would like to join the club, and it identifies the fees and everything associated with that. But it's more of we will bring you in, and we welcome you, and you become a member. And there's no obligation from you other than to come to our meetings and to assist us when we do different community events. So it's quite different from the foundation or the board of the Tweed and Company Theater. And then there's the Tweed and Area Arts Council, and in that what we do is like we've done strategic planning. We've all worked together on that, making sure everybody's aware about who we want to be, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. And then there is and then when we're looking at bringing people in, we're trying to emphasize we do have a plan. There is a purpose to what we're doing, and we want you to be part of that solution. But again, it's not a formal board training or anything, but it's more of a welcoming and letting people know exactly what we've done, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going to go. I'm finished.
Yeah, that I mean, you bring up another really important point, and that is, the concept of having a plan and a vision, right? And I think Heather, maybe you talked about that at first, about the importance of having that shared vision and sort of growing the organization from that, right? So, kudos to the organizations that, you're working with, Dawn. It sounds like, they're all of you actually, it sounds like the processes are in place that allow the organization to thrive, to grow and thrive, and to be nimble, right, as things are changing. So being aware is really important. Go ahead, Tim.
For anyone that does have paid staff as well, that all that consulting has been through the Canada Ontario Jobs Grant, or some of it was through Ontario's Highlands originally. But the Canada Ontario Jobs Grant goes until March 31st. If you have any paid staff, they cover the entire cost, and that was Clearview Consulting that we used, so they cover a portion of that cost as well. It was life-changing. Like, it was incredible training, and they have sessions on volunteerism and fundraising and all those things as well.
The only unfortunate thing with it, and is that you have to have paid staff. Unfortunately, it would be great for volunteers in general for the different organizations that we all sit on, but that's not eligible for the funding. But anyway, and it is good because the BGH Foundation just hired the same company to do exactly that.
Thank you. We have another couple of questions in the chat. Do you think there may be a struggle with your local councils to broaden their recruitment of volunteers, perhaps due to them having to isolate themselves because of COVID?
if I may. There has been a bit of a concern in that regard. Our municipality introduced a vaccine mandate and for all staff, but then elected to extend that to the volunteer community working on the various committees, which Elaine can attest to. Also reached out to her community as well. So all of the various volunteer groups were required to be vaccinated and then had to show proof of vaccination. And that discouraged a number of people, even though they may have been vaccinated, they did not feel that they should have to show that vaccination certificate. And we lost a number of volunteers as a result of that. I'm not going to say where I think that should go right now because we are in election mode, but I think there is a need for the municipality to reach out to acknowledge the contribution that those individuals have made and reach out to them directly. And perhaps we should ask them to come back.
Thanks, Don. I think, you know, COVID has had such an impact, as we all know. And, you know, I was just a participant in a presentation to Ontario East Economic Development Commission's conference, and we talked about recovery from an economy perspective. But, you know, we, I think, need to focus our efforts on recovery from, you know, like, for example, you know, the volunteer loss and retention perspective. You know, I think there are people who are still, you know, immune compromised that stay home, you know, who wouldn't come out to more public gatherings and things like that. So, you know, and I mean, speaking to Tim's comments, I know you meant this for your team, but also, you know, creating safe spaces for people, right? And making sure that, you know, everybody can play a part and be a part without judgment, right?
What's this
So
OAS.
if I can, I think we have time for one more question. And there's a question in the chat here. The challenge of succession planning in a community-based organization. It's great. Oh. It's great when, sorry, hang on one second. Oh, geez. I lost it now. Okay, sorry. The challenge of succession planning in community-based organizations. It's great when there's a strong leader who can mobilize volunteers with their plan and vision, but what happens if that individual or the leadership moves on? That's a great, great question.
It's a very good question because we, even with Tweed and Company Theatre, find ourselves in that position right now. As we mentioned, I am the president. I've been very much engaged in working, and I am going to be stepping down as a result of being the next mayor of Tweed. And so it's trying to find that next person. We've reached out to somebody that we think will be good in that role, and they are going to accept. But that is a huge concern because if you look at the members on your board, not all members have that same skill set, which is going to be necessary to continue working with the organization and taking it to the next level. And we have even found that even in, say, for example, Kiwanis, that it's hard to get people to come into the various positions we need. Like, you know, they want to be a member of Kiwanis, but they don't want to take on the role of treasurer or secretary or a president-elect or whatever. And sometimes people take on that role because no one has. And then ultimately, because their heart's not in it or whatever, you lose the passion and the vigor and the contribution that the team can make. So it's very, very difficult. And again, as we mentioned earlier, a number of the same people sit on multiple committees. Mm-hmm. And so they're already being taxed in that regard and then asked to head one committee. Do you give up another committee? So it's a difficult thing to do, and it's a difficult thing to recruit for.
Oh, go ahead, Elaine. Oh, you're on mute. There we go.
Whoopee, I won the award for tech. Certainly, this older citizen is in this boat. And I've been thinking a lot about it. And I'm thinking, why not do co-chairs? Why not thinking not job shadowing, but certainly that sharing the task, but not leaving the total task. And for Elaine, it's like, stop talking so much and let somebody else talk.
I was also just going to add, you know, I've seen in over the years where perhaps, you know, when you have that really strong champion and they do step away for whatever reasons, you know, and to Elaine's point, you know, co-chairs or a shared responsibility where there are people who, you know, and kind of speaking to Christine's resource board, you know, people with different skill sets, like maybe one person could be, you know, your connection to the municipality, and one person could be the connector to, you know, doing community outreach, and, you know, sharing that responsibility a little bit, but making sure you maintain some really good communication. And that might be helpful in lessening the load for a person who might be a bit apprehensive of taking the leadership role, and, you know, sharing that responsibility.
Can I just introduce? I just wanted to mention, because it just came to my mind. When we did our board training for Tweed and Company Theatre, we invited a number of the other organizations in our community to join us. They didn't have to pay. We covered the cost, but we wanted to and make sure that they had some of the ideas that we were going to garner from that as well. Finished.
Awesome. Yeah, and you know, that board governance and board development is really, really important, that, you know, so that you're all you know, kind of working together to the same goals and having a strategic plan. I need to throw that in, some kind of plan for your future with a vision and goals. And we're at time, so I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for sharing your insights, your obvious passion, your commitment, and your inspiration, you know, and, you know, sharing some of your tactics with others, and it's really a beautiful thing to see. And I am grateful that I have had the experience over the last, whatever, you know, 15 years at least, to be sharing some space with all of you in some capacity. So thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Carolyn.
Well, thank you to the panel and to Karen for wrapping that up. So it's lovely. So, like, this is what we love about this. It's just so many great ideas and ideas we can adapt for our own communities and organizations as well. And I know there were a few questions we didn't get to in the chat. We'll see whether we can get some of them answered for you by our participants as we go forward. So I think we've got some great tie-ins to our next speaker of some of the information that was just talked about and some of the questions that were asked from our resource perspective. So I am so happy to introduce to all of you Heather Johnson. Heather is a volunteer engagement professional, which I thought is maybe one of the cooler job titles I've ever heard, for sure. And I'm super excited to be able to introduce you to Heather, and more importantly, the Halton Volunteer Centre, as well as the Ontario Volunteer Centre Network, which Heather is going to talk about. So Heather has been working with the nonprofit sector since 2003, and she moved in that sector after 12 years of working with Enbridge Gas out of Toronto. And her current role as Director of Volunteer Halton allows her the opportunity to share her knowledge and her expertise in support of the nonprofit sector in Halton region. So I will let Heather talk further about her experience, her expertise, and I'm just really looking forward to bringing Heather as one of our speakers today. So I will stop sharing. I'll get Heather highlighted on our screen. And Heather, are you able to Let's see, if you start talking, I'll see you and then I can highlight you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, I am delighted to be here, and I tapped in for about the last 20 minutes of that panel discussion. So fantastic engagement. So glad to be here and so glad to be invited. Yes, I'm Heather Johnson, and I am the Director of Volunteer Halton, and I'm also representing the Ontario Volunteer Centre Network. And what I'd like to do today is just sort of tie in some of the conversations you've been having around attracting, inspiring, and retaining volunteers. As Carolyn mentioned, I've been a volunteer engagement professional, and it is a really cool title, I must say, for over 20 years. I've been on the side of the desk recruiting volunteers, but I have been a volunteer most of my life. My parents were very involved in local community, and because it's frowned upon to leave your kids at home, my brother and I, were always dragged along, and that really sparked my passion. And I did start my career off in the for-profit world, working for the gas utility, and sort of found myself in the role of a volunteer engagement professional. And what I love to do is share with you some of the different tools and tips around attracting, inspiring, and retaining volunteers, and also introduce you to the Ontario Volunteer Centre Network, which you may or may not be aware of. And this, hopefully my system is going to let me. All right, system, come on. No, what's happened here?
If you have any challenges, I have it up too. I can share.
Why don't you share? I will stop because I will get you to share. So I'll stop sharing and you share mine. And I'll talk, which is what I'm good at. So if we could go to the next slide, that would be great. So today I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about, how do you attract, inspire, and retain volunteers, and how can the Ontario Volunteer Centre Network help you with that? If we can go to the next slide, that would be great. And so you may not be aware that there is a network of volunteer centres across Ontario. And at the end of this presentation, Carolyn's going to send you out a list of the contacts of all the volunteer centres that are available to you. And our mission as a network is to provide a provincial network and a voice to strengthen the individual and collective ability of volunteer centres to help promote, support, and enhance volunteerism. So there are 19 centres across Ontario. They represent all Ontario regions. And during the pandemic, we supported 6.6 million volunteers and get engaged in their community. So some of this was very direct emergency COVID responses. Some of it was organizations that were looking for essential volunteers, and others were how could we support volunteers as they were perhaps displaced from previous opportunities who had to shut down due to the pandemic. So thinking about those arts and culture organizations, those sports organizations. And we supported over 4,300 organizations with recruitment support, training, and coaching. And these are the types of things that you can access through your local volunteer center. I know there were some great conversations in the last panel around some of the trainings and the opportunities. And yes, that jobs opportunity grant to train your paid staff is a fantastic one. And I do encourage you, if you have paid staff, to take advantage of that. But from a volunteer perspective, your local volunteer center can probably help you with training and support for those other needs for your volunteers, including your board of directors. So let's flip over to the next screen. So let's talk a little bit about how you attract volunteers. And I know there's been some great conversations going on today, but one thing I'd really encourage people to do is, create those position descriptions. And this is writing down everything that a role does. I'm getting, as I'm listening to some of your other presenters, lots of things are in people's heads. You've got a lot of people with great knowledge who have probably been doing some of those roles for quite some time. Write down what everyone does, because that's going to help you as you're looking at engaging different people in your roles, perhaps moving people into new roles, and welcoming those in your community who want to be part, into sort of identifying what are some of those roles, what are some of those specific skills that you're looking for. Keep this up to date. The pandemic has changed everything for us. You probably have different policies and processes around how you'll handle maybe your regular ongoing events or your regular ongoing programs to meet, the COVID protocols that you've put in place? How are you going to keep your volunteers, your clients, your communities safe? So take some time, update those documents. This can also be a great task for engaging new volunteers. Maybe someone who's done the role, say, hey, can you help us update this? What did we miss? What's new that we haven't listed on this? Think about what barriers people might have to volunteering with your organization. And there could be many that you hadn't necessarily thought about, that perhaps are new, again, due to pandemic restrictions and as we come through this, but also barriers that perhaps you hadn't thought about. So thinking about from a screening perspective, and I know in the last panel there was some conversations about, well, what do you do when someone raises their hand and says, I'd like to get involved? So if you have a role where perhaps you do need to do a little bit more screening on someone, maybe someone's handling cash, you want to make sure that they're, that they understand how to make cash and that they're going to represent your organization well. Maybe you're having your program deals with a vulnerable population, working with children, working with older adults, or someone who perhaps, has limited capabilities to provide direct supports for themselves. So you need to think about what those screenings are, but also think about, are you over screening? Do you need someone to provide a vulnerable sector check or a police records check if they're, welcoming folks at your event, if they're going to be not necessarily providing a direct client service? Think about, what your current screening processes are. Do you need references from folks? Will you accept a reference letter? Will you accept someone to say, hey, I've got a friend who's looking to volunteer and I can vouch for them? Is that part of your screening processes? Think about what other types of supports perhaps you can provide. Maybe you're hearing from volunteers, or you're having challenges getting people to attend your events, and there's an issue around transportation, for example. Maybe you're in a more rural area and that's a concern. You don't have an integrated transit system, and you're thinking, how are people going to get here? This could be a great in-kind donor opportunity. Perhaps you've got a donor who provides transportation in their business that you can say, hey, this is a great way that you can support us by providing some transportation, maybe having folks meet at a particular location and drive out. I used to volunteer for an organization in Pickering, the Pickering Museum, and that was a really big challenge. We were north of the city, and our local transit didn't go there. They were able, our team was able to connect with a local transportation provider, an organization that actually provided trips to get to the airport, and their in-kind donation was, we met at the mall and they trucked us up there. It helped reduce, from an environmental standpoint, it was a great opportunity, not as many cars, but it also meant that folks who perhaps just share a car in the family or don't have access to reliable transportation could then say, yes, I can volunteer because I can get there. Maybe you need childminding services, opportunities, where you want people to get involved, but they say, I can't come to evening meetings. Zoom has probably, fixed some of that, but if you've got you've got in-person events, so maybe you've got an opportunity to engage in some childminding or some opportunities for families to volunteer together that would then expand people's ability to volunteer. And a key one around attracting volunteers is don't waste their time. And what I mean by that is have all of your recruitment activities ready to go before you put that call out to say we're looking for volunteers. So have whatever your application process is, your sign-up process is, up to date. The correct dates on it. It's got the right email address or contact person that's listed there so people know who to contact. And then are also properly staffed. In my role as a director of a volunteer center, one of the things I'm hearing from our community is people are saying, well, I'm calling or I'm emailing and no one's getting back to me. That's a challenge. So, before you put that call out to say, I need volunteers for this activity, make sure that you've got someone lined up who's going to check the email applications that are coming in at least once a day. Someone who's able to staff a phone call, or at least ensure that a phone call is going to get returned within, one business day, for example, so that you capture people when they're ready to go. They've raised their hand and they've said, I want to get involved. But that will wane if it takes them 4, 5, 6 days to get in touch with you. So have all that up front, and use whatever tools you need, whether or not it's an online application form, whether or not it's a sign-up form at a local library event or something like that. But make sure that you follow up with those folks and tell them how they can get involved and get them going right away. And then how do you inspire them? How do you get them to feel really passionate about your organization? And some ways to do this is to include them as being decision makers. So wherever possible, include your volunteers in making decisions. Decisions get made often, at the board level and at committee levels. What can your on-the-ground volunteer teams do? If you're orientating them and you're training them and you're providing them with the boundaries, this is what the role entails, this is what the role does not entail, but give them autonomies to make decisions, to find those solutions, so that they can take charge of that. Certainly if you're running in events or in your programs, there'll probably be things where you say, if this occurs, you absolutely have to come and find the senior leader or the staff member or what have you. But, managing sort of those ongoing smaller issues, give them the autonomy to make those decisions and to find those solutions. That gives them buy-in, that gives them a sense of, I'm part of this team and I'm being trusted to represent this organization well. Tell them the impact, demonstrate the impact of what they're doing. Maybe you're needing volunteers to come in to help stuff envelopes for a mailing. And not terribly exciting work, you can make it fun, but, they're wondering, what's the point of this? Tell them. Maybe this is a mailing. You're saying, we're sending this out because this is part of our fundraising campaign, and our hope is to encourage people to donate so that we can revitalize the local children's playground, or, purchase equipment for the local hospital, or whatever it is. Tell them the impact of what they're doing and why this is important and why their contribution is going to make this this goal possible. And then whenever possible, show them that impact of what they've done and what they're doing. So, if you've been successful, your campaign has worked and you've got that, you've rebuilt that children's playground, or you've made that donation, or whatever it is, invite them to the launch, invite them to the grand opening of that. Let them see what their impact, what their efforts and what their time has resulted in. So I heard earlier around, the theater. So maybe there's an opportunity for volunteers to attend a dress rehearsal so they can kind of see the play beforehand and things like that. So again, ways that you can get them involved in your impact. And ask them, what is it that they want to experience by volunteering? And this was touched on in the last panel, finding out what it is that they're interested in doing. What talents do they bring to the table? What talents are they hoping to learn? Can you buddy people up? Can you, in that succession planning idea, can you take someone who's interested in learning leadership skills and match them with a leader, so that, a current leader, so that they can learn and perhaps feel comfortable to move forward into that role. Also giving you an opportunity to sort of do a bit of an assessment. Is this going to be a good fit? Is there additional trainings or supports you can recommend or provide to that person? If you're holding an event, a special event, or you're holding, a fair or something like that, whenever possible, build time in for the volunteers to experience that event. So again, my example, I volunteered for a historical museum. We would do a Christmas event every year. We would have volunteers that would come in to welcome and staff people. We would always, have those teams of volunteers come in about half an hour before their shift started, so that we could sort of walk them through the event, so they got a sense of what was going on. They were going to be asked questions by the public, but we also built in time so we could stop and take in something, so maybe there's a performer, maybe there's an activity that they can be involved in. From retaining volunteers, Provide opportunities for volunteers to get together with friends. This is really cool, key for youth. They really do want to volunteer together. So, offer that opportunity for them to volunteer together with friends. Invite people to engage in other activities hosted by your organization. Maybe not necessarily volunteer activities, but come out and experience what it is that your organization does. Keep in touch between events. We send out save the date cards, for our galas and stuff. Send those volunteers save the date to volunteer cards for your next big event. Get them excited about it. Get them to put it into their calendar. Make the registration process easy for new volunteers and make it even easier if they're returning volunteers. So this will involve some kind of tracking system to know who's volunteered with you before, what did they do, what trainings did they provide? Did you provide to them, or what trainings did they come with? What information did they have? So that if they raise their hand again and said, I want to volunteer again, you can say, yes, Heather, you volunteered before and you've done these trainings. So instead of having to sit through that whole thing again, it's a refresher. If you've got volunteers that are leaving your organization, wherever possible, ask them why. Ask them about their experience, ask them why they're moving on, and then take action on the things that you can control. So if you're hearing from volunteers that, I didn't feel well supported, I felt that I didn't have enough training, I didn't fully understand what it was that I was being asked to do, you can take action on those and make changes in your processes and in your engagement with them. So again, take action on what you can control, but also recognize that volunteers may only stay for a short time. If you're engaging post-secondary students, for example, at some point they're going to finish school and move on. And know that they've taken a great experience with your organization and they're going to carry that forward to the next organization that they volunteer with. This could mean needing to recruit more frequently, but this is also where volunteer centers can come in. And if we could flip to the next slide, that would be great. Because the Volunteer Center Network and the volunteer centers in Ontario provide a host of resources. There's a lot of support, recruitment, assistance around things like education, training, screenings for your volunteers, the opportunity to post volunteer needs, to get referrals from your community, assistance in perhaps building up a virtual volunteer program if that's something that you feel could be useful for your team, and a host of other services. Volunteer centers can help you find funding, local funding, and tap into other municipal and provincial funding opportunities. They can connect you with new networks, help you promote your opportunities, and provide you that consultation support. So engage us, let us be part of your success as you support your community as a whole. And I'm just love to ask if there's any questions. This is a favorite quote of mine: to start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, because all the work that everyone's doing in your leadership roles, in your communities, and your volunteers are all making a difference for everyone that you touch in your community. So thanks so much.
Here, if I unmute, that'll help me. Yeah, I'll pull Pam on the screen to thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. Heather, that was terrific, inspirational. Great to know the Ontario Volunteer Center Network exists and what you're doing. Great resource, good ideas, job description, look at the barriers. Don't waste people's time, make sure they're having fun. But there's a couple of things that really stood out for me. One of the things that you said, and we are all having trouble getting youth engagement these days, is youth want to bring their peers along.
Yes.
Why didn't we think of that? Very different for some of us older folks who don't necessarily want to or have all our peers. We don't need to bring them all along. But in that stage of our youth volunteerism, we got to bring our peers. I thought that was particularly insightful. And the other thing, Heather, is what you suggested is 6.6 million volunteers over COVID. That tells you that even during COVID, when we were in isolation, what holds our communities together is the volunteerism. And that statistic just highlights that through that difficult period of time. So your inspiration is generating out there, and now we know you're a great resource and amazing job description as well. So
Thank you
thank
so
you for
much.
coming on board and assisting. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
I welcome everyone to reach out. Like I said, Carolyn will be sharing the information. And one thing that I will send out to Carolyn as well that's just happening is one of our center networks, the Volunteer Toronto, is hosting an Ignite Fair for youth, which will be online. So I will send you the information for that, because this may be a great resource for your team as well. But thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you for joining when I know you're in the middle of your conference. So we
Not a
really
problem.
appreciate that.
Thanks.
I do see Phyllis has her hand up, but Phyllis, I think we're a little bit running out of time, so we'll maybe just do some closing remarks, and then if people want to stay on the line, they can do that, and we can answer your question if you have one. We do really need your feedback on these sessions. There's I did post the link along with Heather's contact information in the chat. We will be following up. You'll get an email after this that'll have a link to where you can pull the presenter information. It'll take me a little bit to get it up there, working with our colleagues to get it up there, but we will share that with you. But we do need your feedback. So tell us if you've got suggestions for speakers, your ideas on what we've presented. That we would really appreciate that. I just can't say enough thank yous for first all of our speakers for doing such a wonderful job and bringing such skills and expertise to the table today. I just am so humbled every time we have these sessions about what we have in Ontario from a skill perspective, and the amazing things that are happening in small places. I just I get overwhelmed by the amazingness of it, and I thank all of you for participating and sharing. And please do let us know things that are happening in your communities, because our networks are maybe not as strong as they used to be. So we need all of your help to bring this forward. I'll maybe turn it over to Karen for just 1 second to share on our next Teeny Tiny Summit, and then I'll stop the recording. And if anyone has any questions or chat they want to do, we can do that after.
Thanks, Carolyn, and I echo your sentiments. It almost, well, I will say it often brings tears to my eyes, just, the building of community that happens and the strength and power of volunteers in our communities. Our next session is we're focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how diversity, equity, and inclusion can support economic development in teeny tiny places. And, I think we've kind of touched on it. We're all seeing newcomers to our communities, and, let's focus on ways that we can embrace the change, embrace the diversity, embrace new ideas. And we're going to hear from communities and organizations who have done some really creative and amazing work so far, and just start to create a bit of a sharing community, because I think it's a place that we can all use some support moving forward. So really looking forward to that session, and looking forward to seeing you all at that session. I will say there was a question posted that we didn't get to, and it was around equity seeking groups and bringing them into the community, and providing that sense of community and belonging. And I mentioned that maybe we can touch on that as part of the next session. So for the asker of that question, hopefully we'll see you on the 30th. And thanks again to everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, everyone.